In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
21 years ago today, the eyes of the world were transfixed, you might say, upon the skies of Manhattan. I think Lloyd's playing of Samuel Barber's Adagio before the service might just as much have referenced that as the events that we remember today. 4 years before that, the day last Thursday, September the 8th, was the day on which the nation went back to work after 8 days of tumult following the death of a princess. Most of us, I think, will remember where we were on both those occasions. Well, last Thursday, we were given another. We will remember that day for all our days, because the death of a monarch defines our lives. Those who are old enough to remember the death of the late King George VI, or indeed even the death of the late King George V, and of course what followed in the year after his death, so much defined the character of our monarchy ever since. Those who can remember those times know that the date stays with you, and not simply the day on which news is heard, but the day on which things happen afterwards, the day of the funeral, and of course so much of the necessary business that comes between. Today there will be a small fragment of that necessary business in the St Neots Market Square at 4 o'clock, when the proclamation that was made yesterday at St James's Palace of the new King, Charles III, is made in our own town. At 1 o'clock today, across the counties of England, those proclamations are made in each of the counties, and ours is made in Cambridge. We associate ourselves 3 hours later. And so at the moment, quite by chance, we find ourselves on this Sunday between death and funeral, for there will be another. On this Sunday, we find ourselves in the period of acknowledging the accession of our new King, perhaps rather more strongly than mourning the death of our former Queen. The two stand together. But of course, what touches our hearts most is the death of Her Majesty, in the same year as we have celebrated 70 years of her reign. And perhaps it is good that we can tie those two together with so many echoes from the first in the course of our remembering the second, and not simply a little bear with a marmalade sandwich. What does one read in church on the Sunday following the death of the sovereign? I don't believe that the publication of the Church of England's National Liturgical Office's finest hour has happened recently. The suggestion was that we should have the conventional readings for a funeral. No, that is not what brings us here today. That's another time, 8 days from now. No, today we come to remember all the virtues that our late Queen embodied. And so it is right that as she so associated herself with the teachings of Jesus Christ, as she said more than once in her Christmas broadcasts, that we align ourselves with some of those most fundamental teachings in the readings we hear. We hear what St Paul has to say about good Christian conduct, Let love be genuine, hate what is evil, hold fast to what is good, love one another with mutual affection. And we know that over these last few days there has been an outpouring of stories from family, from those who have been close in the political world, and from figures in the church, as well, of course, as from those countless hundreds of thousands who have had their few minutes with Her Majesty. There has been an outpouring of stories that tell us of the one who held in high esteem Christ's teaching to love our neighbours as ourselves. Indeed, someone who at times of adversity would still know how to counter that adversity with good. With openness, where openness is right to hear. She did, after all, coin the phrase annus horribilis for 1992. But also with dignity and quietness and privacy, where that is also required. So there is much that we are unlikely ever to know about these last few days, and that is right and proper. But let us hear Christ's words to his disciples as words to our late monarch. We may need to edit them in order to hear them properly, but they are, I think, the right ones for today. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. I suppose we could retranslate that as, no one has greater love than this, than to devote one's whole life to one's nation and commonwealth. And that is, of course, what she has done and what she has understood herself to be doing all these years, ever since that broadcast on her 21st birthday before she was Queen, when she talked about her whole life, whether it be long or short. Well, we know which of those options came to pass. And then hear what Jesus says a little further down. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. Now, it's the obsession of our modern age to want to constantly ask, what will be somebody's legacy? But I think with this passage, we need to start by recognizing that the fruit of the calling of our late Queen has been showing itself for 70 years and more. The legacy has been from her start, not from her end. It has embodied in the character of the nation a recognition of the primacy of the Christian virtues in life, regardless of whether one ascribes to the fundamentals of the Christian faith. And in that, her subjects from many other faith traditions would, I am sure, fall into agreement. For she has been, though she was never the one to coin it, a defender of faiths as well as the defender of the faith. The fruit of our late Queen Elizabeth is already showing itself in the lives of those who succeed her. We have had the pleasure and the privilege in these last days to hear her son, King Charles III, speak of his mother's example, of his mother's character, and of the teaching of the Christian faith which he too ascribes to. And he has said that so much more openly in these last few days than perhaps we have heard from him in a long time. Our new king is quite clearly determined to continue all that has come down to us, the fruit that has lasted already from our late Queen. Go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. And I think we see that too in the new Prince and Princess of Wales. duty, respect, honour, hopefulness, joyfulness, love. All those stories we've heard in the last few days of people who've had their few minutes with Her Majesty somewhere in these last years, they all speak of that quality of being the centre of her attention, however brief that encounter was. And that is the mark of service with love, that one can be present to those who are in front of you, however much other things are being carried by you in the midst of it. Some of us aspire to that, but never really achieve it. So, in these days, of course, we mourn our Queen, our late Queen, our beloved Queen. And we also hope and long for justice from our new King. But we do so knowing that in all that we have had from her, it has been blessing. It has been grace. It has been love. Rejoice in hope, said St Paul. A reading, by the way, which was read at the marriage of those who are now Prince and Princess of Wales. Be patient in suffering, it says. And have we not seen that? Persevere in prayer. Well, we have an example before us. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to strangers, even ambassadors of countries you've never visited, even the crowds who come for their honours, even those hundreds and thousands who are at garden parties, even the people who are clamouring to meet you along the roads and wish to give you gifts. All these are signs of grace, and all these have been in the life of the one we celebrate in these days. May our late Queen rest in peace and rise in glory. God save the King.